I used to teach a course at the university when I was a professor on urban ecology, and one of the sections in the course had to do with water, and so I've done some research on water use and things like that. I know a little bit about it, and it works. It really helps a lot when we're doing gardening, which I'm into now. But one of the things that was really sort of interesting that started back in the 60s and the 70s, we're talking 40-some years ago, was that people began to get really interested in what can we do to save water in our homes and our houses. And you know, a lot of cities were at that point were already starting to run out of water. And so there was an institute called the Farallon Islands Institute in California that started something that they called the Integral Urban House. And they were like a bunch of scientist hippie types who decided, you know, that we're going to buy a big house just like everybody else's house, and we're going to do everything we can to be as efficient as possible. We're going to use as little energy as possible. We're going to save as much water as possible. We're going to try to grow our own food, all these things. And so this was in Berkeley, California, and it was right up the street from where I lived when I was a student. And so I visited this house several times, and it was really fascinating. And so I thought I'd look at their water use, just to give you some ideas about how we could use less water in our daily lives. This is typical number of gallons used per day per person in a normal sort of suburban house. 140 gallons per person. Can you imagine how much water that you personally are responsible for? I mean, it's including, you know, the dishwashing and what you're drinking and bathing and what's going in the yard and stuff. And so they managed to do a study, and they broke this down. This was actually done this study was done in LA. But outdoor use came to be 73 gallons a day, and indoor use was 67 gallons a day, right? And if you look at the way water was used outside the house, people washing their cars. Some people washing their cars like every week, right? Car washing can be a big water use. Whether you wash it at your house in the driveway, or whether you take it to the car wash up the street, it still takes a lot of gallons. And people who had swimming pools, that takes a lot of water. You know, you put the water in there, but you have to keep adding water all the time because it's evaporating and going into the air, right? The car washing water goes down the sewer, runs into the street, goes down the sewer. And then people had gardens and big lawns, and most of that water was actually, they're putting on so much water that soaks into the ground, it goes down into the water table, soaks into the ground. Of course, some of it is going into the sewer, it runs off, and some of it's evaporating as well. So that's why every day each person was responsible for 73 gallons of water used outside their house. Inside, they weren't using as much as outdoor, and I think that's probably true in most houses that have yards at least, that they're probably using more gallons of water outside than inside. The biggest use, I think we discussed last time, is probably the toilet. Was that right? I can't remember. I mean, this data is like 40 years old.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, because it was 5 gallons every flush.
Yeah. So every day, each of you is responsible for 32 gallons being wasted down the toilet. Doing the laundry and washing dishes takes 14 gallons. Taking a bath, 21. And you only drink about 3 gallons of water, and that's used for cooking and drinking, right? I guess this you consume, it stays in your body partly, you know. But at least 67 gallons. You know, flush down the toilet, go down the sink, down the drain, goes down the sewer every day, right? So that's how the water breakdown is daily, and it amounts to 59,100 gallons of water a year per person. In the integral urban house, they managed to use 50 gallons per day per person. Right? Think about that. 140 down to 50, it's way less than half. You know? How do you think they did that?
Well,
What
what
do you
is an
see?
urban house? Does everyone know what an integral urban house
Well, I
is?
told them it was a research center that they set up where
Okay.
a group of scientists, hippie types actually, back in the
Oh, wouldn't you know
60s, 70s, decided to put together a house where they could be as efficient as possible and study the ways they could save water and energy and all that kind of stuff. And then they wrote a big book about it. You can actually find a book called The Integral Urban House in the library.